stress, diarrhea, fur balls, hair balls, vomiting, over grooming. What do all these have in common? They could all be signs related to constipation in cats. Unfortunately, too many cats will experience constipation issues at some point in their life, and the concern increases as they age. But don't worry if your cat's experiencing some of these symptoms, or there might be some warning signs that are appearing that your cat may be moving towards that constipation stage, because today we're going to talk all about cat constipation, GI health, gut health, and give you some great, natural, easy remedies that you can use to help your cats feel much better, improve their gut health, and improve longevity, and most importantly, improve their quality of life. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor. I'm an integrative holistic veterinarian who's on a mission to make sure you, as the amazing pet parent that you are, feel empowered, confident, and supported, that you are on the right path to helping your cats and your dogs feel their best and live their longest, best, happiest lives ever. So today we're going deep into the gut, into the cat's gut specifically. And how many people here, raise your hand, let me know in the comments. How many here have a cat that vomits, that gets hairballs? Maybe they're not defecating at least once a day. This is really, really common. And unfortunately, constipation is this insidious disease that can go on for a period of time, go unnoticed until it's essentially really, really bad. And where your cat hasn't defecated in maybe even a week or more, and now you're at the vet clinic and they need to be sedated, manually evacuated. Not good. We don't want our cats to get to the stage, get obstipated, have develop megacolon, and where all of a sudden now that colon is all stretched out, it can't contract down, and it makes it more likely to occur in the future. Your cat can't defecate. They build up toxins in their body. They get sick. They don't feel good, and they have to go back and forth to the vet clinic. We don't want that to happen. So I want to start with some of the symptoms. These are like the check engine light for your cat. If you're seeing these, take notice. A vomiting cat is not a normal cat. If we're seeing fur balls, hair balls being brought up frequently, that is not a normal sign. Yes, it can be a normal thing with cats grooming their hair if it's happening every now and then. But if it's occurring frequently and it's occurring daily or weekly, this is the red flag. This is the check engine light. I don't want you to look at it and go, let's put a sticky note on that check engine light and keep driving down that interstate. And all of a sudden you're down the road and all of a sudden the engine blows up. We don't want that to happen. And that's what can happen when we ignore these warning signs and these symptoms, especially with our cats who are so good at hiding disease. So some of the symptoms that you may be noticing if you're worried about constipation, or if your cat's developing constipation, is we might see some abdominal pain. If they're always like crunched up, they don't feel good. So they can be gassy. GI symptoms, vomiting, bringing up hairballs frequently. If they have dry, hard stools, that can be a concern too. Now, if your cat's on a raw food diet, the stools are much smaller. They're much more compact. They don't stink, but they shouldn't be straining to defecate. And your cat should be going every single day, never longer than 2 days. So if you're feeding a raw food diet, or you're thinking of changing over to a raw food diet, keep that in mind. There's less stuff in raw food. They're absorbing more nutrients than, say, a kibble processed diet. That is a normal change. Keep that in mind. But don't let it fool you. If your cat's straining, you're seeing blood in the stool, they're not pooping every day. These are warning signs that we need to be aware of. Now, why does constipation occur? Now, the thing is that, and keep in mind, I see a comment, TJ, this is all of mine have diarrhea. Well, I would definitely go to the vet, work that up. Of course, with any of these health conditions, always go to your vet, have a full workup, make sure there's no underlying health problems, which can be a cause of constipation. But also too, with constipation, we have this buildup of hard stool. And then once they get it out, Sometimes we see diarrhea pass afterwards because the GI motility, that gastrointestinal motility, that contracting down, the peristalsis, the movement is greatly affected. And so a lot of times we see this influx of water, the diarrhea occurs. So you can have a cat that alternates between constipation and diarrhea. There's numerous causes. IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, is kind of an end stage of these processes. Remember, whenever we get to a diagnosis, we've been moving along this pathway of health versus disease, and we're constantly in flux. We're moving, whether we're feeding certain high quality foods or inflammatory foods. Stress can also impact that gut health and the motility because of the gut brain axis. So you'll see things like over grooming. They're over grooming their belly. That can be a sign that they're trying to soothe their gut, or they're anxious. So this is where it's really important to look at your environment, your interdynamics between cats if you have a multi-cat household, and monitoring and seeing and watching those relationships, making sure, we'll talk more about this when we talk about what you can do from a kind of more natural or holistic approach, but making sure that we're providing that physical enrichment. There's lots of easy ways to do this to help your cats, to help reduce stress. There's like aggression in the household. That's going to directly impact the gut health of your cat. And two, one of the biggest causes of constipation, GI issues, GI upset, dysbiosis, upsetting that microbiome, upsetting your cat's gut health, is going to be diet. If we're feeding a processed food diet, especially a kibble, dry food diet, this is very dehydrating to cats. They are not made for carbohydrates. They are not made for dry foods. These little desert animals, they evolved from desert, the desert environment, and they're not adapted to having to drink a lot of water. And when we feed them a dry processed food diet, it increases inflammation. It's harder for their microbiome, their bacteria in their gut, and it increases dehydration levels. That is not good for a cat's stool, because if we're not getting enough moisture in there, if we're not getting enough fiber too, fiber is really important, not too much. Cats don't need a ton. They're not like us. They're not omnivores. They're obligate carnivores, but they still need a little bit of fiber to add a little bit of bulk to the stool to help it get out of the colon and help that motility and help that contractility. We call that peristalsis and that movement of the gut. But diet is the number one factor, and it can lead to dehydration. It can lead to these health issues down the road, which is why we talk so much about transitioning your cats over to a less processed diet. Can be very difficult. We have a free PDF guide at thenaturalpetdoctor.com and our natural pet care shop that you can download that's free to help you with that transition and gives you some ideas for other better alternatives for their diet. So make sure you check that out if you're feeling overwhelmed or confused. Now, the other thing too that a lot of cat parents don't realize is that as our cats age, it can be really hard to identify if they're experiencing things like osteoarthritis, pain in their back, pain in their hips, and that can affect the way they posture. And when you watch a cat poop, right? I'm sure I'm not the only one that watches my cats poop. And if you're not, make sure you're watching your cat's poop to see what their normal is or see if there's an issue. They're hunched and they're kind of pushing, right? You think about, you have to push, but if they have a lot of pain present in their back or their hips because of aging changes, osteoarthritis, that's going to predispose them or make them more likely to have constipation or GI issues. So really, really important to be aware of these factors, because as your pets age through these different life stages, we can support them. That is the beauty of this. A lot of this is preventative. Yes, we're talking about, okay, now we have a health condition, but I want you to feel like relief or, more empowered and confident that there are solutions, there are options. We can be proactive to help our cats so they don't develop these health problems down the road. And arthritis and aging changes is something. That's why joint support, using, your omega-3s is really helpful. Using whole foods like sardines and, freeze-dried minnows. My cats love those. Getting those good omega-3s into their diets as either a superfood topper or as a treat is going to provide that natural whole food source of omega-3s, which is going to naturally reduce inflammation, help lubricate the gut, and also provide their body what it needs and support those joints as your cat ages or if they're in that senior life stage. So there's a lot of things that we need to think about. And I always come down to our 5 pillars of health because these are the big areas that we want to be constantly assessing when we're looking to prevent disease or fix disease in the first place. Your physical health, your gut health and nutrition, which of course, this is a big thing today with constipation, your immune health, emotional health, and environmental health. These 5 areas give you the gold. They are everything you need to know to be able to assess your cat's health and where there might be deficiencies and where we can use supplements, different types of diets to strengthen and bolster your cat's health. So keep those in mind. Whenever I do a talk, I talk about them. We're going to focus on the natural remedies and things that you can do because this is a serious situation. It is a very stressful situation, and it can lead to things like megacolon, where that colon becomes distended and it creates a whole lot of problems and can even be the cause of why we end up putting our cats to sleep, because it can be very hard to treat and control if our pets get there, even with herbs, even with acupuncture, even with natural remedies. We don't want them to get to that end stage of this disease. Very, very important. Now, in terms of the remedies, let's talk about this because I want to make sure you have some tools to move forward from this talk. Everything is being recorded, so you can go back and rewatch this on our YouTube channel, Dr. Katie Woodley, the Natural Pet Doctor, at our Facebook page, The Natural Pet Doctor, or here on Instagram, The Natural Pet Doctor. We made it super easy for you to find us. So you'll be able to find these under our weekly coffee talks with the doc. So don't worry if you're not getting all of it. You can go back and rewatch this at any time. Make sure you like and follow us too, or subscribe if you're following along on YouTube so that you're notified every week when we go live on Fridays, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for weekly coffee talk. So let's talk about remedies. Number 1, what was the big thing that I mentioned? Who here can shout it out in the comments? What is the number 1 cause of constipation issues in cats? Diet, nutrition. If we are feeding a processed food diet, if we are feeding a dry food diet, and we are noticing that our cats aren't going to the bathroom at least once a day, and it's going longer than 2 to 3 days, we need to look at diet. Now, if you're already feeding a raw food diet, I'm going to give you some things that we can add in that are going to help, because a raw food diet doesn't always work for every cat and it doesn't always fix the problem. Yes, it's less processed. It tends to be more ideal, but not every cat does well with a raw food diet. Yep, I said it. I love raw food diets, but they don't work for every pet. So now the thing is with your dry food, if you can start that transition. Yes, cats, we don't want to starve them. It is not like the mission of like, I will beat them, I won't feed them. Cats will literally starve themselves to death. So we don't want them to go without eating for more than 3 days, or they can start building up fat and develop fatty liver disease. We don't want that. But we can start transitioning. We can start adding in things like canned wet food. We can maybe add some water or broth to the diet, increase that moisture. Remember, those dry foods are very drying, and that increases the risk of constipation for our cats. So we want to be adding in more moisture into the diet. And then, so once again, water. I do this with my Moki cat. He has cerebellar hypoplasia. I've never seen him drink water. He doesn't drink from our water fountain. He's, his condition, he's the wobbly cat. They have like wobbliness. That's their syndrome. And so when they focus and they're intent, they have an intention tremor, his head shaking. He eats like a little bird pecking at his food. And so I add water to his raw food diet, so I know he's getting more moisture. The way I can tell if he's getting a little bit dehydrated is doing a skin tent on the back of his neck where, you can pull up their little scruff. Does it drop back down? Does it stay up or does it go back down? It should be nice and elastic. It shouldn't stay up. If you're seeing like a pin, you're pinching it and it's not going down within 3 seconds, your cat could be a little bit dehydrated. Obviously, as they get older, they lose a little bit of that collagen, and they're not as elastic and, bouncy back, right? That's like us as we get older. Some things kind of stay a little bit less, there's less collagen, but it's an easy way to assess. I also notice his coat looks more shiny and it's like less rough looking. So, see what the normal is for your cats. I recommend keeping a journal and also keeping track of their stool too, especially when you're trying these changes, because you're going to be able to keep track of what's working, what's not working, the symptoms, how long you're going in between them producing stool. So definitely keep track of that. Going back to diet, we have an entire free PDF guide on different brands and recommendations. There's lots of great brands out there, from raw foods to freeze-dried raw that you can rehydrate with water, bone broth. People will even use like raw goat's milk. So definitely go to the Natural Pet Doctor and get our simple guide to improving your pet's food. It covers both dogs and cats, and it'll give you some great resources and transitioning tips and tools. So definitely check that out. Now, the other most commonly used recommendation when we are dealing with constipation, or you're noticing that the stool is just very dry and hard, and maybe your cat's straining a little bit, is adding a teaspoon of sweet potato or canned, unsweetened, not sweetened, not the stuff we like for Thanksgiving pumpkin pies, unsweetened pumpkin into the diet. We don't want a lot because it can make it worse or it can create diarrhea. We want just about a teaspoon into the food. And watch what it does, because not every cat responds to these. And so definitely give that a try. A lot of cats really like sweet potato if they don't like pumpkin. Some cats really love pumpkin. Some cats don't like either. These are all going to be trial and error. Each cat is an individual. Cats are cats. That's what I always say. Cats are cats. That's why I love them so much. And so trial and error, keeping a journal to see what they're doing. And then the other thing too is adding on a little bit of oil. Olive oil can work for this. Coconut oil can work for this. MCT oil can work for this. Here's my tip for you from personal experience. Start with a very small amount. Start with like a quarter of a teaspoon. You don't want a ton. You want a little bit, and see how they do. I made the mistake of letting my beautiful cat Tico self-select some MCT oil the other day, and he loved it so much, he ate the whole thing, and it was meant for all the kitties, and he ended up having diarrhea and vomiting. So just FYI from personal experience, not too much. We can overdo these things. So keep that in mind. Now, if you have a cat who's on medications or things like this, all of these recommendations, make sure you're walking it through with your veterinarian. However, these whole food sources, they tend to be pretty safe for them. If you have a cat that's prone to pancreatitis, of course, fats can affect them. Usually it's more of the rancid fats with like the processed food diets, but this is where start small and see how your cat does. Now, if you also have a cat that's vomiting or they're bringing up a lot of hairballs, this is where we can use the power of certain herbs. So ginger is a really helpful herb. It's warming also. It stokes those digestive fires. It moves qi down. It helps with stagnation. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, it's going to help. So we want to use that if they're vomiting. You can just use, you could either grate a little bit if your cat will eat that, or you can also use the ginger powder, or you can even make a ginger tea for your cat. It's going to be a little bit spicy. So I always recommend people, if you've never had ginger, it's a beautiful herb. I recommend trying it yourself first too, because it can be very powerful and strong. You don't need a lot of it. Once again, a little sprinkle, start with a small amount. If you're using a tea, I'd start with like a 1/16 of a cup, divide it in the meals and see how your cat does. You can always put it down too for them to self-select. My beautiful friend Julianne Thorne from Naturally Cats, she also talks about herb gardens and allowing self-selection. It's essentially putting down a towel and a teaspoon of a dried organic herb on a towel in a quiet room for your cat to engage with and self-select. Some will eat it, so that's why we recommend organic herbs. Others will just lay with it, sit with it. They're self-selecting what their body needs. And that is really, really helpful. We use it all the time here for our cats. If there's stress in the house, putting down calming herbs, lavender, your valerian is a really good one too for digestive health, putting down chamomile, chickweed, peppermint. These are all really, really helpful. Yarrow is another great one that you can use, especially if there's some emotions that need to be moved that might be causing that stagnation and creating this GI imbalance that's either manifesting as vomiting, hairballs, or constipation, or even diarrhea. Those herb gardens are a beautiful, easy, safe way to engage with your cats and allow them the natural ability to self-select what their body needs. I don't have her book on my desk, but she also, Julianne Thorne, also has a book called The Aromatic Cat. I highly recommend it. You can get it off of Amazon, and it gives you all the resources you need where you can look at your cat, you can look at symptoms, and you can actually put down those different types of herbs. And she also sells those herb gardens too. If you're in the States, you can get them from Dr. Judy Morgan. So no, lavender is not toxic to cats. There is so much misinformation around essential oils, herbs. So definitely get the aromatic cat. Use organic. Your lavender, the problem here and the misinformation around lavender is that it is one of the most adulterated essential oils in in the perfume industry. And so you don't want to just like walk into Bed Bath and Beyond or your supermarket and you're like, wow, there's an essential oil. Dr. Katie said to use that and grab that lavender essential oil. You need to make sure you do your research and you're using unadulterated, pure, therapeutic, tested essential oils, and you're using them appropriately with your cats. The problems that come from all the toxicity we see with cats is that we're not using pure forms, we're using adulterated, and we're using them inappropriately, and they're being used at high doses, and we don't need a lot. We can allow self-selection, and we need to give that choice to the cats. So I know that's a super controversial topic, but I had to address it. So TJ, thanks for bringing that up because that is a common concern along with a lot of people. Some other options here, especially if you have an older cat and you're worried they have some osteoarthritis, is CBD. Now, there's all sorts of research coming out alongside CBD, which is great, and all of its benefits and usages and the different components of that plant that are being isolated or used. And one of them specifically is CBG. And so there's companies, Planecure is one of them, I believe also Earth Buddy and your Vet CS are a couple companies that also are developing CBG forms of those tinctures that you can use. Now, what's really nice about this plant is it helps calm down inflammation, but it's also working on the nervous system. So it's working alongside the endocannabinoid system, which is the system of balance, of homeostasis in the body, but it's closely connected to the gut. It's closely connected to the nervous system. And we know that nervous system, if we're stuck in that stress response, that sympathetic, like fight or flight response, we know that that vagus nerve, that is a direct connection from the brain to the gut and vice versa, is going to be not working as well as it should. And so if we can calm that down, get our pets into a parasympathetic rest and digest phase, that's going to help the motility in the gut. It's going to improve constipation. It's going to help calm down inflammation too. So look into those CBD products. If your cat's on medications, make sure you're talking to your veterinarian. One of the brands we use a lot is Vet CS. Highly recommend them. And just take a look at that because it can be very powerful, especially if you have an older cat with osteoarthritis, to help treat pain and inflammation. You have a really stressed cat, help calm down that stressed out nervous system. Some of the other herbs that I'd recommend too, and we can use this in the herb garden, we can use it as a tea form, we can use it as a supplement. There's a lot of great brands out there that utilize this in their supplements, like Adored Beast, Animal Essentials, is marshmallow root and slippery elm. The way that these work are they are mucilaginous herbs. Maybe I just made that name up, mucilage. So they're mucousy. So if you've ever had a cup of like chamomile tea, it's very slippery. And that's that mucus. So it's providing extra mucin in that gut lining and through the stool to help it slide out. It reduces inflammation. It's actually a prebiotic for the gut bacteria. So those gut bacteria that make up that microbiome are really essential for the immune health and producing anti-inflammatories, your short chain fatty acids. So it's doing a lot for the body. We need to support that. So I recommend for everyone here using, if you're just starting with those, the simplest way to use those is use a good company like Animal Essentials, and they'll be able to have that dosing for your cat's body weight on the back of the bottle. Super, super easy to give, and I'd give it a try. Once again, keeping that journal, seeing how your pet is responding. If your cat's not improving, if it's not making a difference, it's a very safe herb to use. Keep in mind, you want to give it away 1 hour away from, your other supplements or other herbs, because it's creating that mucus layer in the gut so other things cannot be absorbed. So just keep that in mind when you're utilizing that. Now, the other things too that are very common, food wise, carrots. Yeah, I know cats are obligate carnivores, and you're like, how the heck, Katie, is my cat going to eat a carrot? Right. But what we can do is we can steam them and we can blend them, and we can even mix it in with that sweet potato or pumpkin that I talked about. The reason why I mentioned carrots, not only are they really high in vitamin A, but they're also helping to move stagnation. So they're really good food therapy medicine for our cats. So when we think about Chinese medicine and what happens with constipation, we tend to have a lot of times what we call yin deficiency. Yin is the moisture for the body. If our cats are getting dried out, that stool now is dry, becomes stagnant, it's not moving. So if qi, energy, the stool is not moving, we have what's called stagnation. If we have stagnation sitting there, it can create more heat. So a lot of times we want to see if we can get these cats onto a cooling protein like rabbit also, but utilizing some of these other foods that are going to be moving that stagnation. Ginger is one of them. Utilizing your carrots, that's going to help too. So we want to start improving these imbalances. Now, food is medicine, takes a bit of time for it to work, but it is the foundation for what we're doing. So that's really, really helpful. The other piece too, so those are some great options. Another great whole food option too is egg yolks. Start small with this if you have a cat that's sensitive, but the reason why egg yolks are really helpful with constipation and gut health issues in general is that they're really rich in choline. And choline is essential for nerve function and supporting that gut lining and gut health and the motility of the gut. So we want to increase choline. A lot of cats are deficient in that. So using your egg yolks is going to be helpful in regards to that too. So those are a couple of the main things that I'd recommend using, trying out those herb gardens, utilizing some teas, making sure that we're feeding and optimizing the diet. And then finally, making sure that we're enriching the environment. Going back to those 5 pillars, we need to be assessing physical health and emotional health in order to optimize gut health in our cats. Our cats are amazing, energetic beings, but what comes with that is they can soak up our energy, and they're going to soak up the energy of the environment. So if we don't have routines, if we aren't playing with them, if we aren't engaging with them, if we aren't managing our stress, our cats are going to be greatly affected. And a lot of times it will manifest as a physical symptom of a gut health problem. So something like constipation. So we definitely want to take a look at our environment and look at, how am I enriching it? Are my cats sleeping all the time? What can I do? Am I scheduling in playtime? Am I being engaged? Is my phone away while we're playing with them? So, so, so important that we are present with them. We're also aware of how our feelings and our emotions could possibly be affecting them too. The way I use this with my 3 black kitties is that because I'm aware that my emotions and my feelings can directly impact my cats, it helps me be more present and grounded, because I know that what I'm doing is going to impact their health. And the neat side effect, that's a positive side effect for me, is that it's helped me become more grounded, because you can't see her, but she's literally sitting on my desk in her cat bed, my Kiwi cat. She sits here with me every day. And a lot of times she puts her little head on the edge of the bed and just watches me. She is so connected to me that if I'm not grounding myself and releasing a lot of the stress from the day, and I'm allowing it to like fester and not feel good inside of me, she's going to directly absorb it. And what does it manifest for her? Hairballs. And so I know if I see those symptoms, I have to assess, okay, where am I at currently? What can I do to help her? Going back through some of these supplements that I just recommended, I can help them, and it helps me too. That's the beauty of using a holistic approach. Holistic with a W is that it improves everyone's lives. Everyone's lives, including yours. I hear it from so many clients that when they start implementing these changes in these routines and becoming more aware of like where they're at emotionally and being like just aware, their health improves too, which is the coolest thing ever. And that's what I love, is that it's about the entire ecosystem. It's not just about the cats. It's not just about what to give next, because if you're giving all the things and you're finding that they're not improving, I want you to take a step back and take a look at that emotional health. I want you to take a look internally. I want you to sit and reflect and journal. I know this sounds crazy and woo woo, but I know that this audience, there's people in here who this resonates with. And if you're thinking this is weird and it's not resonating, I want to challenge you to sit down this weekend and think about, am I just hoping that the next thing works? Or am I just like taking a plate of spaghetti and throwing it at the wall and hoping it sticks? Because I find this a lot of times, especially with those cats, where we're trying lots of different supplements, we're changing the foods, and we're just like in this panic state. We actually have to take a step back and ground ourselves and reflect. And a lot of times it comes down to that emotional health and the energy and the frequency that we're at. And that is the big change that occurs when we address that. It opens up the healing and the energy to allow your cat to breathe and for them to heal their body. Super, super important. So stay tuned. There will be a blog post that comes out with this cat constipation video that will go more into detail with dosages, brands that I recommend, and how and where to use these different types of foods, because I see a lot of questions coming in. So make sure that you're on our newsletter. You get weekly emails with other helpful tips, hints, remedies, free content, webinars, upcoming summits, where you can continue to learn more how to optimize your cat's health, especially their gut health. So make sure you go to thenaturalpetdoctor.com, subscribe to our newsletter, make sure you're subscribed, liking, and following us at The Natural Pet Doctor. So that way you can continue to learn and grow your knowledge, help your pets, help yourselves, and together we can be the change we want to see in the world for ourselves, for our cats, and just change the energy that's here. It's not easy to do, but together as a collective, we can do it together. I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up, taking time out of your beautiful Friday morning to learn more, to help your pets thrive naturally. I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the Natural Pet Doctor. I will see you all again next Friday, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for our weekly coffee talk with the doc. Take care.